Hi, my name is Mike, and my goal is to help all of you achieve your innovation research outcomes faster, less expensively, with less bias and fewer assumptions. The obvious next step for me is giving you a way to sort through strategic options so you can accelerate into experiments quickly, cheaply, easily, and productively. This blog documents many of the thought exercises I go through as I continually strive to take existing knowledge and emerging technology and blend them together to address your unmet needs. If you'd like a deeper dive, I've got a few options for you. First, I have a masterclass on how to develop prompts for jobs to be done research. In fact, I've given you all the prompts that I use to build qualitative models. You're not going to find anything like it anywhere else. Second, I have a community. You can find that at community.pjtbd.com. It's free, so hop in and join the conversation. For the too long didn't read folks, my approach to using AI in some cases requires that we generate a quantity of outputs that is not necessarily conducive to survey construction. It just makes them too long. Not too long ago, I published an article on a video, which I call a blogcast, that demonstrated an approach you can use after the fact to shrink those lists down to a level that you can actually use. The approach requires a review of other factors in the model, such as situational factors and context, in combination with stakeholder collaboration, to filter the list down to only those metrics that are relevant to a subset of those factors. It explained the reasoning for both inclusion and exclusion in the output. Still useful, but there's now a better way. In order to emulate what really happens when humans synthesize a large set of metrics, I decided to theme metrics in a way that provides the same level of coverage on a concept level while reducing the number of metrics. For example, if you've been outputting 20 metrics to provide yourself a robust set to consider, this would allow you to output 5 instead. These 5 would essentially be themes of a larger set. Why do this? Well, I've gotten a lot of feedback from people using my prompts that their stakeholders are telling them that all 20 metrics they output for each step are good, and they don't want to exclude any of them in a survey. Unfortunately, that's a problem. So let's take a deeper dive. Those of you who have accessed my masterclass on jobs to be done prompting know that I tackle the problem we sometimes face when experienced practitioners challenge us to replicate their maps. The challenge always seems to include a simple job statement, but has a highly contextualized job map, many times not beginning at the traditional first stage, define. I also face scenarios where some maps were 10 steps while others approach 20, sometimes 30. This is what happens when people begin to lose their edge and their egos begin to overshadow the instructions they repeat to others on a rote basis. I'm good enough to take these risks, they say. I dealt with this cognitive dissonance by adding some parameters to my job mapping prompt that allowed me to impose explicit control over the start and end points of a job map. This operated within the bounds of another parameter which controlled the detail of the map. So no matter where it is told to start or end, it would produce a 10-step map or an 18-step map or a map somewhere in the middle. Was I able to perfectly replicate the bias of a human? No, not perfectly, because after all, no one can be as good as a perfect human. But given that I can produce my map in about 1.5 seconds, I'm pretty sure I'll win on the grounds of faster and more cheaply. If you're willing to pay for a handcrafted and hand-assembled Ferrari that elevates social and emotional jobs over functional jobs, maybe you'll shoot for the handcrafted version of jobs to be done research modeling. But how many Ferraris can they build in a year? How many problems do you need to solve in a year? Still, I'll hold my models up against anything I've seen done by humans. They're more than good enough, and in most cases, far better. Now, I had to deal with another challenge in that humans handcraft their success metrics not based on what they hear, but based on a quality assurance choke point with people who had no involvement in the interviews at all. The end result is often completely different than the research team came up with during their course of interviews. The focus is almost always on reducing the set, because the goal is to fit them into a survey that people can actually complete. Initially, I lacked the confidence in two areas. First, I didn't trust the AI to prioritize success metrics. Second, I didn't trust my prompting skills. So I simply added an input parameter that allowed me to spit out as few or as many as I desired. I figured that I could evaluate them myself for inclusion in the survey. Of course, this added time back into the equation, which is what I was trying to eliminate. I needed to address my prompting skills to see if I could work my way through this problem. My first stab at this resulted in a blog that you may have read, which talked about filtering down a set of metrics using ChatGPT. What I described here leveraged generative AI to help me reduce my set of metrics from the default of 20 to a smaller number. The approach also provided validation for both exclusion and inclusion so we could justify the result to others, like stakeholders. It was a simple process of identifying three things. 1, what are the key research questions? 2, what are the most important contexts? And 3, what are the most common situational factors that we know about? If I do say so myself, for about 30 minutes of prompt engineering and testing, the results were pretty darn good. However, I still have a lot of work to do with my on-screen presence. This approach definitely accelerated a purely human approach to synthesis. It eliminates metrics that weren't deemed relevant to input factors, which could take humans far more time to replicate. The problem was this. While the human process definitely goes off the reservation occasionally, the general goal is to theme up an abundance of success metrics into metrics that encapsulate the meaning of 2 or more metrics. This is the only time when authoritative figures deem it acceptable to append examples to the end of a metric. In the ODI world, the authoritative rule is that the perfect desired outcome statements shall not have examples. Sadly, this rule is commonly broken. So if a human can theme up metrics, why can't generative AI? Can theming be done? The current interfaces we have with large language models have some serious limitations. Most people that write 1 or 2 sentences and then bash AI probably won't see these, but people like myself who spent over 20 years writing code tend to test the boundaries. A chat session with OpenAI and others does not allow you to store variables in memory. In a theming scenario, you need to establish a benchmark to theme up from or chunk down from. So step 1 is to establish the benchmark. Unfortunately, there is nowhere to store it or reference it. When I tried to set and store variables, I would also instruct the LLM to be ready to back up its output with an explanation of how it themed up metrics step by step. It would gloriously do this, but when I asked it to output the benchmark set so I could examine it, I was told essentially, "What you talking about, Willis?" So I had a problem. Upon further probing, this is when I determined that it couldn't store or reference constants or variables dynamically. What should I try next? I did know that a chat thread could be used as memory. From what I've read, and this was about the Anthropic solution specifically, for every additional message, the entire thread is reread, which is why it can slow down as the thread gets longer. Therefore, the logical next test was to tell the model to generate a benchmark set and output it. I default mine to 20, but this is a parameter I can change at runtime. Then, once it is outputted, take the next parameter, which is my target output number, and output those. During testing, I also asked it to explain how it themed the benchmark set into the target set. Frankly, I was pretty amazed at how it worked. The end result is a prompt that will give you the number of success metrics that you desire, or that help you to build a set that fits within your survey constraints. Let's say that you want a maximum of 60 metrics across a 10-step job map. You'd simply ask the model to generate 6 metrics per step. Based on my initial experimentation, it's quite successfully theming up my benchmark set to the target number I'm looking for. So I'm getting complete coverage based on a benchmark set without having to field the survey with 3 to 4 times as many success metrics. But there is a caveat. I have to output the benchmark set, which takes time and clutters things. The solution will ultimately be a prompt chaining approach where I can store outputs in memory. This also makes it possible to avoid all the cutting and pasting, because at the end of the process, I can simply construct a sequential output by taking the relevant variables I've stored and outputting them in the order that I want. I can also determine what format the output should be, Markdown, JSON, etc., and send it to a database or platform of my choosing via an API. While I won't disclose my entire prompt, because there are many people who have paid good money to access them at my masterclass, I do think it might help. To break down the basic approach I use for theming, I will definitely be refactoring things once I'm 100% convinced it works, but experimentation is messy. So let me walk you through some of the things that I've added to my 13,000 plus character prompt. I decided not to read through my code here, so you'll have to go check out my blog. It's all detailed there for you. So to close this out, I've spent about as much time inside chat interfaces as I intend to. I'm looking forward to beginning the automation of these processes 100%. In fact, it's a work in progress. That will include the following: creating an agent to walk you through the construction of a model, taking model outputs and constructing survey instruments, taking survey instruments and injecting them into various survey platforms, possibly creating an agent swarm that recruits respondents from a variety of sources a human simply couldn't process, taking the outputs from a survey and constructing data models within business intelligence platforms, analyzing the data model 6 ways to Sunday in a matter of seconds, like no human can, constructing an answer engine with core output structures and intent-based query capabilities that allow you to interact with forward-looking research data in new, dynamic, and potentially unlimited ways, including comparisons to continually updated behavioral data from other systems for journey research. I know some of you will continue to value bespoke, handcrafted models and analyses that take 4 to 6 months to produce, especially those of you that provide the service. I'm not one of those people. I hope you all have a great day.